Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments, particularly in the so-called West Bank, the districts of Judea, Samaria, particularly the northern Samaria region, including the Houthis, the redesignation of Ansar Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen, into the foreign terrorist organizations list of the United States, and much more. But before all that, let's now turn to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, 94 hostages remain in Hamas captivity. We're, of course, in the fifth day of the cessation of hostility as part of a broader outline that is set to secure additional releases in the next couple of weeks. What are we to take of the current state of play? I hear there are some exchanges of fire in a number of locations, violations, unfortunately, that may ultimately bring about the downfall of this arrangement.
Well, this seems a bit too pessimistic right now. Of course, everything can happen. There can be provocations on either side. On the Israeli side, not by the chain of command, which is disciplined, but perhaps by others, perhaps on Temple Mount, or some other places. But yes, you are right. As Israel is anxious to see whether day after tomorrow, Saturday, or by latest on Sunday, 4 more female hostages will be released. The remaining civilian female and 3 of the 5 female soldiers. Yes, there are some skirmishes in the Gaza Strip. Mostly, this happens when the Israeli forces take no chances, and when they see armed men, when they feel that they are in danger, they shoot first and thereby enforce the ceasefire. And much the same has happened in South Lebanon, where once again, within a few days, perhaps by Sunday, the first ceasefire, the 60-day ceasefire, is supposed to be over. There are no formal negotiations regarding its extension, but apparently we are not going to see fighting being resumed within a few days. The expectation is that it will be extended by some 30 days. In the West Bank, the Israeli operation in Jenin is going on, and the declared intent, as expressed by Defense Minister Israel Katz, is not only to uproot the terror cells, which intelligence has pinpointed to, but also to prevent the reemergence or resurgence of this terror infrastructure. Of course, this cannot be ascertained right now. We will have to wait for a few months to see whether this promise was indeed fulfilled.
I'd like to focus for one moment on the violations once more in the Gaza Strip, because I think it's important to explain that there are very specific locations in which the IDF is currently deployed. The moment armed terrorists of the Islamist Hamas approach those locations and pose a threat to IDF forces, the IDF forces, in accordance with the outline, are permitted to open fire towards those terrorists and push them away. And therefore, Hamas is, of course, testing the troops, the positions, the various locations, and it's doing so deliberately. It's not just randomly going out and by mistake getting into some IDF position. There's footage with concrete evidence hereof, and therefore those violations are taken note of, not only by Israel, but also by the United States and others that are party to this arrangement. Now, I'd like to turn north to our next panelists. Major General in Reserve, Gilshon Cohen, formerly the commander of the Israeli Defense Colleges, an IDF Army Corps Commander, and a long list of other positions. It's always a pleasure to see you, sir. And I'd like to immediately ask you to focus on the situation in Judea and Samaria, as we're seeing, on the one hand, the IDF launching a wide-scale military operation to eradicate the terror cells, particularly in the city of Jenin, as Mr. Oren mentioned. But at the same time, there is also the Palestinian Authority, which ironically is not doing so in cooperation with the IDF. Rather, it is coordinated on certain aspects, but it is encircling certain villages and towns in Samaria, and any terror operatives trying to flee are either incarcerated or even killed by the Palestinian Authority security apparatus. What are we to make out of that?
Actually, it is really complicated. By the entrance of IDF forces to Jenin, the forces of Palestinian Authority have been to just stop their operation, but they are not at all beyond. What exactly they achieved in the last months of engagement is not a lot, but it is a real message that they are trying to deliver, of course, to the White House and to other states in the Western states that really involved in the Judea and Samaria, that they are coming to take responsibility. But if we are analyzing what's going on in Jenin, it is not only Hamas, it is alliances of Hamas, Jihad Islami, and Shuhada al-Aqsa. It is a group that belonging to Fatah. It means that formally they are under the direct command for direct responsibility of Abu Mazen. So really it is complicated, and the main risk is that all these groups, they are called Katiba, they are well equipped with a lot of smuggled extra excellent weapons and charges, and they are organized with war room in order to coordinate between themselves. And it is a risk not only to the Palestinian Authority that they are really making a manifestation that they are doing what they are willing to do. It is a risk to cities in Israel. Regarding Jenin, it is all these cities in the Israel Valley, Afula in it. And speaking about Tulkarem, it is 15 kilometers from Netanya, just very, very close to Road 6, the main Israeli autostrada. So really it is a dangerous phenomenon that Israel cannot really live with it and contain it. What really will be the outcome? It will not be ended in 1 week operation. It is a long effort.
Absolutely. Well, there was a report coming out of Jordan in which the Mukhabarat, the Jordanian intelligence, has captured a large quantity of smuggled munitions before entering into Israel.
Including RPG, if you saw the picture.
Absolutely. Including RPGs, M23s, M16s, and even mortar shells and other type of munitions that are quite alarming, to say the least. And therefore, I'd like to ask the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense, Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish. First, it's good to see you, General. I'd like to ask you particularly about those munitions. First, these are American munitions that are being smuggled, American manufactured munitions, which raises the questions whether this is now coming out of Iraq or it's coming out of potentially even Afghanistan, where the United States under the Biden administration abandoned many munitions during its withdrawal from there. What is there to be done in the context? And of course, there are serial numbers, so this information will be figured out quite soon. But what does Israel need to learn from those munitions that were uncovered to prepare for all those terror elements in Judea, in Samaria in particular, that are keen on fighting against Israel?
Well, Jonathan, first we know that it's not the United States that is smuggling those weapons to the terrorist organization within the West Bank. Now, in a
Goes
serious
without
note, of
saying.
course, this is a collaboration of terrorism, crime, and I would say a combination of bad entities. The Iranians are still there. They are still trying to smuggle weapons to the West Bank. This is still their aim that there would be a fight against Israel with the terrorists in the West Bank. The idea is still there. It's not gone, and this is for all of those that think that peace is just about to break and the war is not there anymore. The war is there for sure. The war against terror. I think that the lesson learned here is the combination of efforts. One of them is the kind of a coalition fight, but for sure the relations between Israel and Jordan and how important they are. We just heard by you that the Jordanians were the one that stopped this smuggling, and this is very important. Of course, we know that it is also an interest of Jordan. They don't want any tourist cell in their own country. So this is, of course, one effort, I would say, on the very close circle to Israel. But it is not only us. This is also a coalition way of looking on these routes of smuggling weapons. It is not only, by the way, only to our direction. It could go, and it goes also to Syria. It goes also to Yemen and to other routes. And once again, the head of the snake, which are the Iranians. So the war is still there, and we talk about it all the time, that we have to remember where the head of the snake is and where everything starts. Of course, on the very short circle, which is inside the West Bank, General Gershon just talked about it. This is a long war, but we are sure that we need to be on the initiative. This is what is happening in the last few months, I would say, even in more intense way. And in the last week, we saw it in Jenin and some other places. So this is what is expected from us, the IDF and the other security organization, to be very proactive against those terrorists, continuously strike them, continuously making sure that they won't raise their heads, because as we all know, that the West Bank, it is even closer from Gaza Strip to million of Israelis. We always say it, but people, it is hard to believe that the shortest distance between the Mediterranean to the West Bank, it's 30 minutes of driving. That's it. It is much less than coming to work in DC if you live around the city. So we have to be very focused, very alert in the offensive all the time against those terrorists.
Jonathan, if I may add, first
Go
of
ahead.
all, it's better to talk in terms of distance rather than time because of the traffic jams. So maybe the ride could take more, but in kilometers, it's only a dozen or so. Another point, again, in the direction of General Gabish, you can look at the war in Ukraine, where it was reported that the central headquarters of the armed forces is now allocating the equivalent of $60 million to various commands in order to buy off-the-shelf drones rather than have it centrally operated. I'm mentioning that because there was a report that in the Samaria area, the Palestinians have been practicing drone flights. And if they met...
They attacked Itzar with a charge, a drone with a charge.
So if they manage to have it and try to fly it in the direction of Ramat David Air Base, for instance, this is going to be an operational problem, not only for the civilians. And the 6-day war in this particular area started when the Jordanians shelled artillery shells in the direction of Ramat David. So this is quite a new danger that Israel has to prepare for.
Thank you, Mr. Oren. I think it's important to mention yesterday during a Q&A session at the World Economic Forum at Davos, we saw the Vice President of Iran for Strategy, named Mohammad Javad Zarif, who is essentially the chief of propaganda and disinformation of the Ayatollah regime, come out and declare that so long as Israel exists, the Mukawama, Arabic for resistance, will be there to confront Israel. He said this, of course, in the idea of the occupation exists and so on and so forth, but naturally Iran views the Jewish presence on the land of Israel as occupation in its entirety. So that is one point to take into account. Now, I'd like to turn to you, General Cohen, and particularly about the decision by the United States to re-slap the Iranian proxy Ansar Allah, which is dominated by the Houthi tribe in Yemen, designating it once again as a foreign terrorist organization, something that the Biden administration in the early days of its administration decided to revoke. Thankfully, this has been done. The United States stressed its decision to confront this threat, and it's not going to play any games that were done prior. But I'd like to ask you, since the Houthis came out, and particularly the commander of the Houthi Navy, stating that Israel has no capacity to transit through the strategic strait of Bab el-Mandeb, irrespective of the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, which it claimed it was party to, even though nobody invited them, as I mentioned before. But nonetheless, the Houthis are adamant on thwarting freedom of navigation in the strategic strait alongside the adjacent waterways, including the Red Sea, and not only Israel, also its allies, namely the United States, the United Kingdom, other European allies, Australia, and so on. So my question basically is, what does Israel intend to do about this, if at all? And is this done also in collaboration with the Americans? Is there the political will or capital to confront this threat?
Well, the main challenge is that without land forces, boots on the ground, it will not be really possible to uproot the capabilities of the Houthis, because they are well entrenched in the caves and underground, well protected from bombing from air. And regarding that, it is not a secret that IDF was not built to deploy expeditionary force. That distance really required a well-formed organization for power projection of expeditionary force. The only military organization can do that is the US Army, the Marines, and we can understand that after Afghanistan, they are not at all happy to enter to another adventure. There is another military organization that can do that, the Egyptians. They have two helicopter carriers that it is exactly for that designed, but they are not at all expressing any interest in that. It means that really we are facing a threat that meanwhile we don't have a relevant operation to stop it. We can learn from the Saudi Arabic. They succeeded to bring an end to the attacks of the Houthi just by paying protection money. It means that maybe by a kind of negotiation, maybe United States, they will require something that will really be considered for them as enough in order to stop it for a while. But it is a challenge unsolved.
Well, I'm of the opinion that the United States is going to confront this challenge kinetically. Time will tell, of course, when it's going to happen, but the Houthis are well aware that the United States has the upper hand in every capacity. Of course, nothing is hermetic, as General Gavish always says, but nonetheless, when we're talking about the necessity to confront this and to put them in their place, not only in Yemen, but also the Iranians who direct and supply the various munitions to conduct those attacks. The United States has it well in its priority list again. But General Gavish, I'd like to hear your take on the Iranian equation of this story. The Iranians remain adamant in claiming that they will confront the state of Israel at a time of place of their choosing. And they also highlight the various munitions at their disposal to be able to do so. But within this context, again, I'm going back to the same question that I asked you already 2 days ago, and that is, are we well prepared for any contingency that the Iranians may go out of their way to try and confront Israel, despite the very real dangers for the regime if they intend to do so?
Well, Jonathan, I'm sure that we, as you said, we talked about it 2 days ago, but we talked about it several other times. I'm sure that if we would ask our viewers about the main 4 pillars of fighting against those ballistic missiles that are being shot toward Israel, they would all tell you that there are 4 main pillars: the attack one, the alert one, the active defense, and the passive defense. And this is it. The strategy is still there. So when we're talking about attack option, all options are open, and Israel openly declared what would happen if Iran would decide to attack it. This is the first pillar. The IDF is prepared for it. The IF is prepared for it, and we did it in the past. In the last year, it happens. It happened also twice with quite severe damage to the Iranians' capability. So this is the first one. Of course, the alert capabilities are being enhanced all the time. We all have to remember that at least when it is coming from the alert and the defense, we have a coalition led by the United States. So this is a joint regional effort. And of course, the active defense, which is also a joint effort by CENTCOM and the IDF, IEF air defense, and the multi-tier defense. And the passive part of it, which is if we would need to apply it, our civilians know how to behave. So everything is on the table. The question would be really, of course, and time will tell, what would be the overall strategy of all the parties of this coalition when it comes to offensive operations and everything that could go this way. But anyway, for sure that the IDF is preparing itself to all the options: the offensive one, the alert, enhancing the alert, active defense, and passive defense.
Thank you, General Gavish. And this preparations, of course, or preparedness is a 24/7 endeavor, and therefore it doesn't stop at any given moment. We have less than 2 minutes. In one sentence from each, or 2 sentences from each tops, what are we to focus on for the next 24 hours? General Hakohen, we'll start with you.
I'm really anxious about the Lebanese situation. because the way in which the Hezbollah are interpreting the 1701 resolution is that they are absolutely allowed to act in the north side of the Litani River, to do whatever they want, and southern to the Litani, they are not allowed to act publicly, but they are acting undercover. It means that the way they are interpreting the agreement is that undercover is okay. And from that, we are beginning the new challenge about creating a feeling of security for all the Israeli residents that are expected to come back to their home.
General Gavish, half a sentence.
Well, I'll put my civilian jacket, Jonathan, and after talking to my wife just before this update, we really are looking forward for the next 2 days and hopefully to see some more hostages that would be released.
Yes, sir. Mr. Oren, 2 words.
The new chief of general staff is about to be nominated, and all of the candidates are excellent officers. The country can not go wrong, whoever is going to be picked.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I'd like to thank General Gavish, General Cohen, and Mr. Oren for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.
My name is Doron Gavish, and my background, 30 years of serving in the Israeli Air Force. My last job, I was the commander of the Israeli Air and Missile Defense during the introduction of the Iron Dome to the defense of Israel. All of this allows me really to be part of the team here in TV7. It is super important to have such a platform. We talk about the global situation, we talk about Israel and those different angles which are relevant to the discussion.